Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Nice to see you, folks. My name is Dustin Cormier. You're watching an episode of How to Rock Astrology. This one's an important one. I wonder if you could guess why. If you've been watching my show, you might be entertained to know that the moon in Sagittarius is my own natal moon sign. As we can see here, I'm a tropical astrologer that uses Vedic philosophy to interpret the signs and the planets and the signs I'm giving here. Today in particular, we're talking about Sagittarius Moon with Virgo Venus. And you guessed it, that's me. Hi, what's up? Fireworks, fireworks. This is my own natal Moon and Venus combination. And I'm very excited to out myself and talk all about it here on my channel today. As I often say, when it comes to one's own energy, I find that it's hard to be objective about one's own energy. So I've done my best to try to write down a little spiel about how I see this energy playing out based on the figures. I always have a spiel that I give about everything technical, and I try to ultimately base my reading on this. But for those watching, you are going to be getting this from the perspective of someone who has this sign combination. And I can't wait to talk about it because ultimately it is a difficult combination. I will say that in my chart, I have many things that help with this situation. I've got Mercury with the moon, which Mercury is a friend to the moon. Sucks for Mercury, which is probably why I'm going to be more honest than I should be in this video and out myself. But Mercury helps the moon. So that gives me an ability to have some water in this Svadhisthana chakra. As well, I have Jupiter with Venus, and Jupiter delights any planet that it's with. So Jupiter delights my Venus, although it starves my Jupiter. This is just how these sorts of things work. But the reason I'm saying this is because just because you have a difficult placement by sign, like this one, doesn't mean that you are completely lacking in your ability to convey what is represented by the moon and Venus as the arbiters of the water chakra. Over and above that, even if you have difficult placements with your moon and Venus and it doesn't have any support, you can always use your mental concentration, use yoga and meditation to concentrate on removing the compulsive nature of your mind, because ultimately everything that we read about in astrology is a astral sphere. It's a genetic ancestral samskara, a past impression of past action, past attitudes that are a part of us, and we have to channel them constructively. The best way to channel all of our energies constructively is to see above them, to treat them objectively, and to recognize our true transcendental soul as the pure awareness witnessing the karma of the astral spheres. If you can tune into that, then you can face difficult moments where the difficulty of any placement causes contention between you and especially your partners in the case of these water planets. Now, the main reason I'm kind of getting at this is because thankfully Venus being in the 10th house isn't typically starved too hard by the moon. As we can see, this is Venus in the 10th house from the moon. So we can see here, the opposite aspect is 180 degrees. The 8th house is 270 degrees. That's at 3/4 of an aspect. 240 is the 9th house, 240 degrees from the moon. This would be a half aspect that the moon gives. And then at 270, that's the 10th house. That's when a planet like Venus is in the 10th house from the moon gives 1/4 of the power of its capacity to give an aspect. So there is 1/4 of the moon starving Venus here. It can be more if the moon is at like 29 degrees Sagittarius and Venus is at like 0 degrees of Virgo, I believe that's what it would be, then it would be, the angle would be closer to the opposition, is my idea that I'm getting at there. Yeah, it would be closer to the opposition, which means more power to this aspect. I digress. Either way, I'm really, since it's kind of generally only not that big of an aspect, I'm not necessarily going to talk about Venus being starved by the moon like I have in these other videos, because this isn't really necessarily happening here. But these two arbiters of the Svadhisthana chakra, the water chakra, are both in precarious positions by sign. The moon is 1 sign away from its debilitation point, and Venus, at least the moon is in neutral dignity. The moon, Jupiter, which rules Sagittarius, is not an enemy or a friend to the moon. So the moon is neutral in Sagittarius by dignity, but it's still 1 sign away from Scorpio. So it's still very willful, still very individuated, and has a difficult time blending and asking for help and being receptive to the needs of its lovers, because it puts so much of its own enjoyment into enjoying its ambitions and what it's trying to build. Now, this is even more so for this particular combination. I'm probably going to mention the fact that me doing what I do on YouTube while my girlfriend is at home, me and my girlfriend live separate from each other. She's at home and I'm here at night crunching these 40-minute videos, and I'm going to go to her place at the end of this. We're only going to have an hour to hang out, and then we've got to both wake up tomorrow and go to work. But as I'll talk about, I find my time to have quality time with her so that she doesn't kick me out. And also because I love her. You'll have to take my word at that now, won't you? This Venus is in the 10th house from the moon. And so there is an aspect of this Venus even more enjoying the work that it does, the performance that it does, essentially really the actual service that this Venus does. And this can be a practical Venus that ultimately it's not catered to what Venus is supposed to do because it's debilitated. So both of these planets are very close to their debilitation, which means that they are going to have a hard time instinctively knowing what to do in a relationship and how to bond in a relationship with another human being, especially if they don't have the other things that can support them. For the moon, if the moon is closer to full, that's a good thing. It's almost like being exalted in Taurus, the closer it is to the full moon. By being waxing rather than waning, it has more strength. By having Shadbala, by being both of these planets prefer to be closer to the 4th house cusp, and that gives them strength. They can have aspects from their friends. Venus, actually, one of the things that I should say here before we roll on is that one of the saving graces of this combination is that Venus, even though it's debilitated, it is still in the sign of a friend. It's one of the great things about Venus is that even when it's debilitated, it's still in the sign of its friend Mercury. I always say, think about the fact that what does Venus rule? Rules Libra and Taurus. It's an air sign and an earth sign. What does Mercury rule? It's Gemini and Virgo. It's an air sign and an earth sign. In Vedic astrology, we say that these two are friends. And I should say, we are big in Vedic astrology about the relationships in aspecting planets that are friends to each other, and also the dignity, the relationship of the planet to the sign lord of the sign that it's in. In this case, Venus is in the sign of a friend, Virgo, and it is delighted by Mercury, which essentially means that it really it's debilitated. It's not used to thinking about extravagant, enjoyable, economical ways of thinking about how it can enjoy its relationship with its lover. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is that this person probably feels, because of the combination of Venus being debilitated It doesn't need much. And the moon in Sagittarius, by being one sign away from Scorpio, it doesn't ask for help. It wants to be able to have its own emotional motivation and drive without needing others. Because we tend to think, especially with Sagittarius moons, we tend to think that that's a good thing. I don't need others. I can invigorate myself and do things myself to make myself feel happy and joyous and vitalized, so I can go and do the career things that I want to do. And I don't need a partner at all. I can just go and tap into many different people, many superficial connections, my own way, through my own will. And there's always people that will enjoy this person, especially because Venus is in the 10th house from the moon. There's a need to be of service and to be an enjoyable, fun person in this serviceable way. But ultimately, a lot of this can just be an escapism from actually doing what this person really, at some deep level, wants to do, which is to get beyond its insecurity of feeling like it can't connect, feeling like it doesn't actually have anything interesting to do with the person, no depth of soulful passion is what this person can tend to feel. They might not feel like they think all the time about what would be a fun thing to do with a partner, because they don't. Because Venus doesn't need much when it's in Virgo. It likes to be simple. It wants to be appreciated for not wanting to go on a big extravagant date. And they are picky. We are picky because we want to find someone who doesn't expect too much from us. The caveat here, for the Venus debilitated and for the moon close to debilitation, is that we also have to do it all ourselves. And it's difficult for us to do what all human beings actually need due to the metaphysical law of the divine intelligence of the chakras, which is that we need all of these things to be in balance so that nothing is overworking. It's like, if your liver's working a lot harder because your kidney has failed, you could say, I don't need my kidneys, but really you're just working harder, not smarter, by not disseminating the work. It's the same thing with the chakras. If you think that all you need to do is work on your ambition and your creative recreational projects, like putting 40-minute videos on YouTube, 12 at a time, in order to feel good about yourself and feeling worthy and valuable, then that Svadhisthana chakra is going to be missing. The Svadhisthana chakra, the water chakra, the second chakra, is ruled by the moon and Venus. And it essentially works by working smarter, not harder. By actually genuinely caring and having a soulful connection with others, which works two ways. Soul connections, there's an aesthetic, unconscious, erotic choice where you sip your coffee in a certain way and somebody sees it and they love the way of what you are when you're not trying. This is essentially what this person really revs themselves up on. They try to show that they have many interesting ways of doing things that can catch someone's eye, who's the perfect person who would appreciate what I do without putting in a lot of effort. Unfortunately, nobody will ever really meet you at your aesthetic, unconscious, erotic choice or your symmetry if you don't ultimately have things to think about going out and enjoying these parts of ourselves with, like going out to the movies, like going out to a festival, like going out to a carnival, and going around and trying all the games, and having the personality that you have in the way, being there for them in the way that you want to serve them in that way, but thinking about these things, thinking about fun things to say and to do and people to connect with, and doing it constantly, actually putting in effort to do that with your partner. Because ultimately, what good is a fun, awesome samurai sword on the top of your door if you're not going to use it? I don't know, I'm trying to think of, what good is any valuable item, you know, like a fancy record that you don't like take out of the box. That's kind of what this person wants to be. It's like, you know, don't touch the film on myself, because if you actually take me out of the wrapper and, you know, try to look inside and listen to the music, there's not actually a lot there, because we didn't put a lot of effort into the music of our soul. We just don't want to be bothered by being that luxurious of an entertaining, soulful personality. We're really much more focused on just doing ambitious work that we know is good work. It's the Venus in the 10th house from the moon. We feel emotionally compelled and better when we know that we've done some kind of good work in the world, and ultimately can even share that with our lover, which is great. But the problem is that the moon and Venus ruling the Svadhisthana chakra are supposed to be enamored by what we are, and we're supposed to be have others enamored with us for not doing anything, not serving, not, you know, having to, like, I'll tell you, essentially the biggest part of us, of this nature, the biggest thing that you're going to have to deal with is, like, it's like you're driving an old diesel tractor, and you know it takes way more diesel that's a chunky, uneconomical oil that doesn't actually have much fuel in it, and the whole ride is a rough trip, and the things are falling off a part of it all the time. But we have a psychological ability to help our lovers get through the fact that they are lacking in their love life and their sex life at some level, because we are too busy not wanting to be too extravagant in that regard, and we are prepared for our lovers to present us with saying that I'm not getting enough out of you, I'm not having a sentimental experience of life with you. And we serve them by, they blow up and we sit and we listen to the whole thing. We say, yeah, that makes sense, and, you know, I know that you're like this, but I'm like this. I'm not somebody who kind of thinks about doing these things all the time. I'm a little bit awkward. And the thing is that Venus being delighted by its friend Mercury, it's in the sign of Virgo, and this Venus is delighted by its friend Mercury. Like I said, they both rule water and earth signs. They are communicating planets. So this Venus being delighted by Mercury allows this Venus to still get the understanding at some point of the importance of communicating and reciprocating. And there are some aspects of our vitality, depending, it's different things, you know, like there are times where, what am I trying to say here? Essentially, I'll stick to this same point. Venus being delighted by Mercury communicates. It instinctively knows to communicate about this rather shoddy vehicle that it likes to drive. It's attached to its own vehicle. It's being simple, not needing much, not needing, you know, to do much in order to keep us entertained, although there will be a loneliness and a dryness that we can even get depending on where our sun is and stuff. There's an aggression that can kind of come out because we know that we've taken it upon ourselves to be people who don't have very much water and very much bliss, very much soul satisfaction. We've taken it upon ourselves to get through that, rather than just buying a new tractor that takes regular oil that actually is conducive to the economy of gas and oil. We would rather be this simplistic type of person. So the Venus, by being delighted by Mercury, can communicate about it and say, I'm sorry that I'm like this. If it's okay with you, you know, I can sit with you and talk about it. And then usually what will happen is that the partner has a passionate energy to kind of get more out of the relationship. And the Sagittarius moon with Venus in Virgo will pull out the psychologist hat and wave away and dodge all of the intensity of the energy, but still talk to the person, still show that we're listening, still show that we're caring. Eventually, the seething passion in the person drifts away, and they see that we are communicating. And what happens is that we say, okay, if you really want to do something together, and we'll have a juicy experience, we'll do something, and I'll do it for you. And the partner it's like pulling teeth with us. You know, the partner has to communicate it, but we listen. That is the one saving grace in this combination. It's the one saving grace of Venus and Virgo, is that you will listen and you will communicate. And then at that point, it's like maintaining a vehicle. It shouldn't be this difficult to maintain this vehicle, but we treat it this way. We like that it takes this kind of maintenance of our partner, even though we wouldn't have to maintain and communicate with our partner in this hard psychological way if we were just a more soulful person. Not to say we're not soulful. I consider myself to be quite soulful, but my soulful things that I do are really on my own independent way. And everybody's got other planets that can define what soulful is. For the sake of relationships, we don't put too much soul into our relationships, basically because we want to endure going up the mountain without too much water ourselves. And unfortunately, when you're in a relationship, when you're having sex with a person, when you are bonded to a person, you become each other. And essentially what the person eventually realizes is that we treat the relationship like we treat ourselves, by not giving ourselves too many treats, too many luxuries. You know, this is the type of person, the Sag moon with Venus and Virgo, can go without expensive food and expensive dining, although they generally like to eat healthy. They'll do things to keep themselves vital. They like to exercise, probably. These are intelligent things that they push themselves through in order to mitigate the energy lost by us essentially being people who don't treat ourselves. And we want to be appreciated for the fact that we don't need much to be happy, and we like to endure through dry, difficult, ambitious projects that can ultimately help the relationship, help the family, help fix problems. We're essentially that quiet problem solver with a fun, glib personality that doesn't get to really enjoy not having to do anything. Although we do get experiences of enjoying not having to do anything, because that's what we convey. And we are earthy people, and we get partners who enjoy earthy, sensual people. And this is kind of how this rolls, okay? So I've spent this whole time talking about it all. I've got a spiel that I want to talk about. But first, kind of last thing I want to say that I say in all these videos. Keep in mind, Sagittarius moon is close to debilitation, and Venus is debilitated. And what this means is that both of these planets, which again are the arbiters of the Svadhisthana chakra, usually the moon, when it's this close to Scorpio and in a masculine sign, ruled by a masculine planet. It's ruled by Jupiter, which is masculine. And, you know, Jupiter, the moon in Pisces isn't as bad because it's closer to exaltation in Taurus, and it's in a receptive sign. It listens to its own needs and desires. When the moon is closer to Sagittarius, it almost can't hear its own vehicle shaking like this, but it doesn't matter because it knows that the corn is getting cut. So, you know, so this is just kind of how we are. And these two planets, usually when the moon is lacking its ability to do the Svadhisthana chakra thing, Venus compensates. And so both of these are kind of lacking in this. This is kind of what I wanted to say. So what ends up happening is that this is awkward person who never really thinks too much about the needs of other people, although they are very concerned with, they're awkward because they're quiet, usually, and they don't feel the need to want to say much. Although the moon in Sagittarius, as it grows, it becomes an exuberant personality that kind of essentially compensates in a superficial way for what feels like an intrinsic lack of desire to think about how most humans enjoy enjoyment. We don't think about these kinds of things, and because we're not inclined to think about it, it's like, well, I can be useful to myself because I enjoy working on things. So I'm just going to have to find a partner who enjoys what I do when I'm not around. And that, at some level, is what we attract. But we still have to have these sentimental moments of connecting people. So what happens is that we're kind of more sensual than romantic, which is not where Venus wants to be. It wants to be more romantic, and then the sensual aspects of that are secondary. But this is a person that just feels comfortable enough just holding hands and walking down the beach and talking about life and philosophy. That is our way of getting to our hearts, really. Thing is, a problem occurs when you do this too much. That's the only way that you can enjoy sentimental quality time with your partner, and it becomes boring. It becomes meaningless and routine. We show up to the gig unprepared, and we want our personality to make this boring thing that's cheap and doesn't cost a lot of money. All we needed was a bottle of wine and to hold hands. And I'll talk and I'll don't worry, baby, I'll show you a good time by talking about all the things in the universe, the cosmos, the stars, astrology. I'm going to talk all about it, and it's going to there's so much to talk about. We won't have enough time to talk about it all, at least at the beginning. So there is a narcissistic tendency here, because there's a desire to perfect speech and to have philosophical things to say to anyone, rather than listening and having specific experiences and memories and conversations to have with the specific lover. We don't tend to think about what we're going to do when we go on a date. So when we go and hang out with a person, we don't know what the hell we want to do, so we'll go to the movies, right? And we'll basically look up what do people commonly do for dates? Movies, great. And then you ask the person, what would you like to go and see as a movie? And if they say, I don't know, then you're fucked, because you probably don't know. You'll end up taking them to a movie you would want to see, and it might not be a good movie for a date. You have to think of movies that would be good for a date. And this is part of what was supposed to be your presentation, you know what I mean? So we don't think enough about what other people would enjoy doing, or what feels like a safe, cool thing to do with people in a structured place that's safe, that, we kind of just don't think about all these things. At least this is coming from a man's perspective anyway. Maybe a girl would just think that they're too boring. Whereas me as a man, I think that I'm too like guyish when I try to take a girl on a date. Like, I don't know what you want. Do you want to get a beer? You want to go to the bar and watch like a rock show? Which, I mean, is cool in its own way, but it's not putting thought into it. It's just, this is what I like to do. You know what I mean? So, what happens is that these people, really and truly, that we can be cheap. And it's what it is. Again, this is me outing myself, I guess. We can be cheap because we want to be appreciated for our ability to be satisfied by simple things. We don't need much. And ultimately, what happens at a certain point, especially when you're my age, you get to be about 32 years old. Venus, there's a Venus period. Everybody goes through what's called Nisargika dashas. It's not the same thing as the dashas most people think of in Vedic astrology. It's dasha periods that we all go through. The moon is from 0 to 2. Mars is from 2 to 6. Mercury is from 6 to 12. Venus is from 12 to 32. Jupiter is from 32 to 52. The sun is from 52 to about like 62. And then Saturn is the rest when we die. The Venus, this is a dasha technically. So every person with this with this sign combination from about 12 till about 32 are going to just be coasting on the fact that they enjoy doing simple things and they don't think too much about the experiences that they want to have with a lover. And they get to be about 32 years old when it's finally time for them to come into their Jupiter Mahadasha and to go and do the big things that their life was really meant for. But they have no sentimental experiences of great, fun, adventurous things done and shared with the sentimental memories of a lover that means something. Varieties of experiences based on what the lover wants, where that lover, we do things for the lover that we wouldn't do for ourselves. This is how it's supposed to be. We do things for our lover that we wouldn't typically do for ourselves, but we think about the lover. We spend much time, ideally, if your signs are not operating like ours is, like the Sag Moon and Venus Virgo person. Most people think about what the other lover wants to do, and this is water. You're giving them water by taking them on experiences, surprise, little things, going to museums or something that's catered to what that person would like, spends the money on them, goes out and has a great experience with that person, and then they do it for you. They reciprocate and they give you the water, and your memory of being loved by the universe is rich with the varieties of experiences that somebody actually caring about you penetrated your simple box of what you think you like. They penetrated what you thought you would like, and they give you a gift that because they thought very deeply about what you would like, and they take you on a wonderful experience. And for most people, by the time you get to 32, you have enough of these experiences, if your Venus and Moon are well enough, that you feel satisfied, you've connected with a lover, maybe you've gotten married, and you are connecting with someone who actually feels meaningful to you. If you are somebody with this combination, what might happen is that you'll get to 32 years old and you'll think, well, that was a dry youth. That's okay because I'm going to do my Jupiter thing and it's going to feel like a little dry because there's no water. It's like, they say in winter, if you're cold throughout the winter and the spring, once spring comes, if you haven't been staying warm, you'll get sick in the spring because all of the frozen energy inside through the winter, it comes out and you get snotty and you get all these things. Same kind of thing can happen with this person at age 32, is that it's been a winter for them and now they're 32 and they're like, oh, fuck, I wish I had realized that I only had one chance to be youthful and have the best experience I could with people, and I made it purposely simple. Because why? Because I'm stuck in my own ways. This sort of thing can happen. So they can feel cheated, and they can feel that life was ultimately stale, boring, and uninspiring, at least at the sentimental level. Sag Moon, Virgo Venus wants their own personality to be interesting enough that they can show up anywhere and be smart enough to entertain just about anyone superficially. And that's what happens with this person, is that we take on a philosophical, extravagant character that can talk to anybody in a quantity way rather than a quality way. We don't think of extravagant ways of entertaining ourselves or our lover, which can make us insecure. Nobody would love someone so averse to thinking of what most humans think of as fun and entertainment. So we can project a jester-like aloofness and goofiness, and we project parts of ourselves which we think certain people would find interesting. But it's really us wanting to not need to entertain others for others' sake. We don't want to be out of our own comfort zone, because our comfort zone is just, since childhood, it's been too stuck on simple things, on not needing much ado about the water chakra in general. And it worries us that we aren't fun and juicy and willing to devote ourselves in this constant actually thinking about what we can do for people kind of way. We seek comfort over the pressure to entertain others, and we end up seeking a lover who is more laid back, doesn't expect much from us, but can still love what we do and what we are in our own expressive little ways. Sag Moon with Venus in Virgo usually ends up communicating and apologize for not being more than we are. And this is the saving grace of Venus in Virgo, with the Venus being delighted by communicative Mercury. This Mercury is likely somewhere close to Leo or Virgo or Libra, because the Sun, if Venus is here in Virgo, it's possible that the Sun and Mercury are probably in the same vicinity. If this Mercury is in Cancer, then this is a person who really is too emotional to even communicate and to take advantage of the delighted Mercury. Venus is still delighted, and it'll still cause you to communicate, but even your communication will be tough if the Mercury is in Cancer. But if Mercury is in Leo, it's a good place. If it's in Virgo, it's a great place. Obviously, it's exalted. If it's in Libra, it's a good place, because the Sun and Venus are friends of Mercury. So these people apologize for not being more than they are, and then we act as a psychologist in a serviceful exchange for not actually taking the dedication to blend with the other person's mind. We keep people at an arm's length in a certain way. Essentially, we crave sensual respite. We keep people at an arm's length until we get like an earthy craving. This is Venus in Virgo, gets like a super sensual, earthy craving to really there's if you want to hear some level of fantasy inside of me, is to just be naked in like Mexico in some kind of warm river with a bunch of people who are also kind of naked and sharing sensual energy without it necessarily needing to get too sexual. And whether there's lots of people there, that's a part of the nature of this person's fantasy, although there's a compulsion for variety and novelty of other people, which you can chase your whole life, but it's basically like drinking mud to get at water. And all you end up doing is waking up with a gut full of mud and not actually having drank the water. It's the superficial novelty and variety that we cling to, which ultimately feels like you never really connect with anybody. But that being said, we keep people somewhat at the superficial arm's length until we get a craving eventually to just be sensually completely taken over by a sexual experience and by an erotic, horny experience, which gives release and comfort. Release and comfort are very key on this person's mind, especially because they push in a dry way through such things that can make them do great things. Venus is in the 10th house from the moon. They're inclined to do great things at some level, but this is going to come through struggle and sacrifice. And we ultimately, our saving grace is we want to serve in the way we feel comfortable, usually by listening, comforting, cheerleading, and helping the person with life issues essentially outside of our lack of true affection for them. We help them with everything that we can, but when they finally say, ultimately my problem is that I don't think you love me enough, and we say, I do love you, I just don't have enough time to show it, or I am not the type of person to show it in a glamorous grandeur sort of way. It's not my cup of tea, really. And we will help that person get through that particular issue by communicating and being the philosopher that we are. The narcissistic Sagittarius Moon can ultimately love the sound of its own voice too much, though, to really hear the person. And this is why It's very important to recognize when you have a sign combination like this, that it's very important for all of us to recognize that the nature, of our mental compulsions, past tendencies, and mental conditioning from the past. I don't know if I've already said this in this video, but I'm just going to say it again if I have. The mental conditionings and tendencies from the past are just under the astral sphere. We are the pure awareness of transcendental soul that is witnessing the genetic and ancestral karma and memory of our past actions and our nature. And at some level, we have to deal with this as our nature. That's why I'm kind of so cavalier about it. You know, I'm saying all this, probably a lot of people would think this is all fucked up. But this is part of who we are. We have to accept that we're this type of person who keeps people at this arm's length. And that's not right. Yeah. How should I say this? We are the type of person who serves in the way we feel comfortable, and that vitalizes us, and we want to be appreciated for serving in the way we feel comfortable, but also giving the other person the space to serve in the way they feel comfortable. There all ends up being a lot of serving at the expense of, again, it's just two people. We attract people because our Venus is in Virgo. We attract people who have something like that quality. So the two of us end up serving each other a lot, showing devotion that's basically, you know, you've got this dirty old tractor that you want to rub and put WD-40 on all the hinges and show, look at the love I'm showing you, when even at some level, we don't even need to spray every hinge in this way. We just want to show the devotion that we have to the other person, because we are capable of loving. Everybody's capable of loving. So if we can meditate, remove ourselves from the compulsion of our very ambitious Sagittarius Moon minds, we, you know, because even the Venus in Virgo, Sagittarius mind, the Sagittarius Moon mind, is very compulsive, very sensual, very craving for stimulation, but we ignore it, basically. We are craving what we don't give ourselves constantly. And this is why we can even be like, you know, you got to be careful that you don't become a promiscuous person, or a person who will just go to see a massage person, like therapist, or like a hooker or something like that, or some cheap person at a bar who's not really for you, but will give you a sensual experience. We are the type of people who will hug that rail until we get to be 32 and realize that we waste our lives. So, again, if you can see this happening, if you watch this video and you're young, I recommend that you get into yoga and meditation, see the nature of this compulsion in yourself, accept it, and when you move through and you try to find lovers and you're working towards talking to people who could be a potential lover, communicate with them, you know, be with them, enjoy talking with them, practice santosha. This is something that comes from the yamas and the niyamas of Ashtanga Yoga. The first chakra, the earth chakra, relates to the first yamas and niyamas, which is saucha and ahimsa. It's cleanliness and nonviolence. The second is santosha and satya, and these relate to the svadhisthana chakra, the water chakra. Santosha means putting effort into being the water that you want to be, putting effort into doing things that you know would make another person love you and also love yourself. I'm a musician. This is one of the earliest things that I found that I could offer things that I do, which I do it through my own comfort, but someone else can hang out beside me and enjoy me doing this thing. It's still at the arm's length type of bonding, but it's something that I can share with a partner, and my partner ultimately does love watching me do these kinds of things. I do it for myself, and it's something I can share with others. But really, it's also about how you can expand on your ability to love and be loved in an intimate, sentimental, soul-bonding way. And then also the other one is satya, which means being honest when you are going for a long time in a dry way without experiencing, even if you're lonely. You know, when you feel loneliness, you practice satya and you say, I'm lonely and I want to build a life outside of this dry career that I'm used to. And honor it and be honest with it. Because this is how, you know, when you try to do this, you're going to find, oh gosh, I don't know. I can feel I'm lonely, but I don't know how to make myself sustain non-loneliness with someone that actually matters to me. If you're like me, you've probably had this experience. The best thing to do is to see this in context, possibly go to a therapist and talk with them about it, just so you can see it in context. I have lots of people, especially my mother, who I've talked with for a long time to help get me at least not feeling guilty or bad about this nature in myself, because you shouldn't. At some level, it's part of who you are. What you need to do is be discerning about your nature and learn to listen to others. Learn to actually absorb what others are saying. And really, part of the only reason why we don't listen to people is because our own minds are so rich with a compulsion energy, a compulsion of mind. This is why I recommend everybody who has Sagittarius Moon, you enjoy nature, you enjoy the sounds of nature, go out for a walk once in a while. Take a nice, delicious, simple walk down a river or somewhere where there is a white noise type of sound, but especially outside. I recommend you go to a river, find something where it's like got a dip in the river, so there's like a waterfall sound. Sit beside that waterfall, roll your shoulders back, breathe, and listen, and see how long you can listen to the water in that waterfall. You'll notice that as you try to listen, time yourself. Put a 10-minute timer. See how long it takes you before, as you're listening, your brain goes whoop and starts thinking about, okay, you know what? All this sentimental shit doesn't matter. I'm going to just be constructive and go to my job and do all this with Timmy and John, and I'm going to help my career this way. Put your notebook down. Stop thinking about the fact that this is pointless, that you get more satisfaction out of your ambitions in your job anyway. Drop it. Listen to the water. If you can listen to the peaceful sound of that water for 10 minutes, discipline yourself to do it. Train yourself to do it. And do it with the intention that I'm a spiritual person. I do it with the intention that I am not just a dish rag in this universe, but that I am love, and that there's something in this world that also wants to love me. And I'm wasting the love that I have to give by not sharing it with someone who's also looking to share the love that they have to give. Sit with that and open the space for the faith that you can connect this part of yourself that you want to connect with, if you want to connect with it. And see how long you can sit by the river and listen to the river. Having this intention, then sit and see how long it takes you before you start thinking about bullshit, and then let it go. Do it. Try to do it for 10-15 minutes every once in a while. This will get you in touch with the compulsive nature of the mind that is taking you away from the emotionally rich experiences that would make you not feel so insecure, and that would make you somebody who could actually go out and talk to people and be a normal human being who gives a shit about sentimental realities. So, I hope that makes sense, the way I've described it. Now, this has been like the longest video in this series, but I think it's because it's my own energy. Maybe I'm getting something out here. I don't know. I'm doing something that I'm going to look back in the future and say, wow, cool. So, ultimately, as I often like to talk about things in my own way, I like to bring it down to earth at some level at the end and talk about another Western author's take on this energy, Erotic Astrology by Phyllis Vega. This is me talking about the moon in Sagittarius with Venus in Virgo, the kind of love-making nature. It's like, what is this person like when they actually get with someone and are sharing the juicy, sentimental experience of being loved for what is lovable in us? So the moon in Sagittarius, with Venus in Virgo. People with this combination typically resist the temptation to plunge into a serious relationship until they're absolutely sure the person in question is right for them. It's probably because we don't want somebody who expects too much from us. And because we know the caveat that we are going to, of everything I've already said, you know? However, your sex drive is strong and earthy. And once you decide to commit, you are an energetic and passionate lover. Especially, usually what we'll do is we'll go for a long time without it, and then it's the going for a long time without these sorts of things that make us deeply crave it in an energetic way. At least that's my experience of it. Could be for many reasons that that's the case. You are kind-hearted and caring, but also idealistic. And there's a perfectionism that they talk about here. Your craving for perfection can create a huge gap between your dreams of love and everyday life. It's the Venus in Virgo has an idea of the type of lover that they want. And ultimately, they don't accept what is given in reality as the ideal picture that they're seeking. They're way too nitpicky and finicky, because nobody ever really fits the mold that we have the idea of. But in time, we ought to learn the lesson from Venus and Pisces, which is that every soul is the transcendental soul in one, which is the soul in all. And you really just need to tap into someone whose personality, whose likes, whose soul aesthetic is an open door for you to make the connection to the soul in one, which is the soul in all, the Piscean dimension of this. Pisces is the all soul, Virgo is the specific soul. And, you know, consider the true nature of love through that lesson. We ultimately are well served to find somebody who, it's better to have faith that we are going to find somebody who fits where we're at, and to move through people until you eventually do find someone who does fit you, rather than seeking it on the outside, seeking it externally, thinking that you're going to find someone who's obviously this thing, and then finally dipping your toe into them and realizing that what was on the surface was not it. It's kind of a confusing thing, I guess, but ultimately we will find what we seek when we move into the relationship with somebody that feels right in that moment. And just because it feels right doesn't mean it is right, but we need to be able to accept love and move through our experiences with people so that when we finally get to an age where we want to have a lover that we actually want, we will have tried many pies before we buy the pie that we try. You know, try the pie before you buy. Just jump in and be love with people. Not necessarily you need to be in love with every single person. There's nothing wrong with having an idea of the type of lover that you want. But don't look for that. Don't neglect all love possible through the external surface until you think that you're found this one perfect person, and then idealize it and then come to find that that person isn't it. It's more the faith that you can find your soul mirror, your soul mate through people, is the intention that will carry you to someone who's also looking for that. And you'll find people who aren't it before you meet it, but it's that soul intention. It's the attitude that you will find it, and you can have faith that you'll find it. That's why Venus in Pisces does better than Venus in Virgo, who looks on the outside for factual confirmation on an idea they have in their head. For you, a courtship that begins with friendship and intellectual rapport has the best chance of blossoming into true love. It's that easygoing friendship style. We don't expect too much from each other, but we enjoy kind of doing things and pushing each other and even holding hands. It's this kind of thing that blossoms into an easygoing life with a person, where there's not too much expectations from each other, there's patience from each other, and this, ultimately it could end up being a very arm's length type of relationship, which, if it works for us, then it's the love that we're seeking. At some level, this is probably what you'll end up finding. But just because that's the design doesn't mean, when you're too enamored by what you are, you'll never be fulfilled by integrating what you aren't. That's why even when you find such a lover who's also easygoing like you, consider that all humans are enamored by enjoying the sentimental experience of coming down to earth and being sentimental, developing memories, spending the money to have memories with someone that is meaningful. And this will help your moon do the ambitious things that your moon in Sagittarius wants to do. It'll make it less dry and ultimately give you an erotic, confident psyche that will allow you to at least fake being able to do what I do on YouTube, being like, hi, I'm super fucking happy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm having a good time. I got a lover right now, and she's very good for me, and she's very patient, and she allows me to do this arm length thing, but she will pull me out of my head and down to earth and have experiences with me that I wouldn't make happen by my own devices. She often has to pull me into these sentimental experiences, and I'm always happier when she does. It's a conversation that needs to be had. I hope this makes sense. I really went too long on this video, but it is what it is. I hope you guys enjoyed it. My name's Dustin Cormier. This is How to Rock Astrology. Thanks for hearing me really be way too honest about this whole spiel. Ultimately, always keep in mind that this is an energy of a person who has this energy, and I can have biases by my own planets being conjunct other planets. Let me know what you think. Let me know if this was accurate to your experience. I'm very curious what other people are going to say about my interpretation of this energy, so please let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Dustin Cormier again. I'll see you guys on the flip side on the next thing that I decide to do. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today.